This is how I manage my ADHD as a CEO without using medication. Now, the whole reason why I stopped using medication is because back in college, when I was on medication, I didn't like how I felt on it. I felt like a zombie. Sure, my focus was inconsistent, be all up and down all over the place. And I just did not like how I felt on it. So I had to look for different avenues. So this is something I've applied throughout all my years, like going from college, then to medical school, and then becoming a doctor, and then running a business and becoming a CEO. All these things will apply what I do currently to managing my ADHD without medication. And so the very first thing that I had to do, and it's something I consistently am doing, is I had to investigate, why do I have these symptoms in the first place? And so when I found my first doctors that understood the importance of this, instead of just giving me a medication to use, they looked at my body chemistry imbalances that I was dealing with at the time, especially in college. And so some of those things that we discovered and found out was we ran some different hormone levels and saw some imbalances going on there, especially with my cortisol being really low for the most part. And that's why I was dealing with low energy, focus issues, couldn't have motivation or drive. Like I was wondering why I was struggling so much in school. And then I've had to retest this multiple times throughout the year. And I tend to sometimes see that my cortisol levels tend to drop. Other things that I also tested out for was looking at my brain chemistry to look at different neurotransmitters that were off. But more importantly, what were the amino acids that were off that help make things like dopamine and serotonin and GABA. And I found out that like things like phenylethylamine levels were definitely really low, and like my norepinephrine and epinephrine levels were low. And so I definitely had to address that. And also on top of that, I found out that there was very key micronutrients that I was deficient in that help make a lot of these different neurotransmitters that are cofactors. And some of the big ones were my vitamin D levels were low. A lot of my B vitamins were low, like vitamin B6, B3, B12, and I needed to address that. And so once I knew exactly what I was deficient in, I knew how I could manage my ADHD without having to rely on the medication, because there are certain key things in my health that I was deficient in that needed to be addressed. And so that leads into my second thing that helps me manage my ADHD is once you know what you are out of balance in your biochemistry, then you know what to put as far as supplementation at a very high dose. So this is what I currently use as my stack. And because I'm also constantly retesting to see, okay, what am I deficient in? And that is DL-phenylalanine, which that's because I tend to be low in phenylethylamine levels. DL-phenylalanine is an important amino acid that helps make dopamine and helps with the whole dopamine process in the pathway. Then also I use L-theanine, which is really great for helping with dopamine, but also norepinephrine and epinephrine helps manage my stress to be more in an alpha brainwave activity, which that helps you to drown out all the distractions and to have that consistent brainwave activity to be able to stay focused throughout the day. So I love L-theanine. And then as I was saying before, I had a lot of different micronutrient deficiencies. So I tend to always look at using a B complex because a lot of people with ADHD, even myself included, tend to be low in different B vitamins that are critical for helping with a lot of these different neurotransmitter pathways. And then vitamin D3, I tend to just need this usually during the winter months because I live in the Northwest. And so therefore it gets dark earlier and it's rainy and cloudy during the winter months. So I usually will need to take a vitamin D3 during these months. And then for my other hormones, like I will use stuff like Testogain and Simplex M. It's really great for men's health to be able to improve testosterone and just helping with improving energy. And then to manage a lot with my cortisol and stress levels, I will use adrenal desiccated as needed. I usually don't need this all too often. I might go on 3 months with it and then I'll take a break. It's usually good to rotate and not always be dependent on something like adrenal desiccated. But it's really great for helping improving energy, help improving focus. So it's definitely one that really helps me and benefits me a lot. Now, supplements are great. Other things I have to manage when I'm a busy CEO is I have to really stick with important lifestyle things when I'm managing a business. And to be able to manage my ADHD, I cannot let these things go. And so these are like the 5 foundational things that are very critical for me. Obviously, nutrition is a huge one. And I don't want to always be reliant on supplements. So I go through seasons with supplements. Using the winter months that I usually need to rely a little bit more on supplements, but usually when I'm really good during the spring and summer months, I rely more on food as my medicine. Some of the big things that I know I always have to focus on is getting enough good quality protein in and enough vegetables. So usually those two things are something that is a big struggle for people with ADHD, myself included. But the other foundational thing is keeping myself hydrated. The brain requires water. And if you are dehydrated, you will find that you will have brain fog, you'll have headaches. I deal with that a lot. And you also will find that your focus will be off throughout the day if you don't keep yourself hydrated. A really big one, I would say, a foundational thing is exercise. So anytime that I flounder with my exercise and not consistent with it, then my ADHD symptoms start to creep back and I'm not managing my ADHD very well. So therefore, then my business suffers as a CEO if I am not consistent with that. And so I make sure I'm consistent with that, doing daily exercise. And then the other foundational thing is good quality sleep. Now, sleep has never been usually an issue with me. The only time it is if I tend to stay up way too late at night because I'm excited about something. So what I do is I set an alarm on my phone of when to go to bed, not when to wake up, but to go to bed. So that helps me to make sure I go to bed at a decent hour to get a good quality of sleep. And then the fifth thing, this is really, really important, is managing your internal and external stressors. In fact, eliminating your internal and external stressors. So what is internal? Internal stressors are things obviously you're consuming. So obviously the bad foods you want to get rid of, or if you're in a toxic environment. So external stressors would be also the environment that you're dealing with, whether that's in your own business. If there is toxic people that you're surrounded with, you might need to let those people go in toxic relationships. So whatever that is, that might be sabotaging your ADHD and making it very difficult to manage your ADHD. You always need to be assessing that. Now, I know there's a lot of information, so you should download my ADHD management protocol that I use for myself, and you can get that in the description below. Now, I talked a lot about managing stress and why is this really critical for your ADHD and managing your ADHD without using medication? Because if you can manage your stress, because stress and ADHD kind of feed off of each other. In fact, about over 50% of people with ADHD tend to have general anxiety disorder. And so you want to make sure you're on top of managing your stress. And some of the techniques that I use for managing my stress is walking. I find that when I do walking outside and get my steps in, I tend to relax. Being in nature, sometimes even going on hikes with my family, this helps de-stress me. And if I do that more consistently, I find that my stress levels are good. The other things that I do like doing is, of course, when there's moments of high intensity stress, is doing breathing exercises, also grounding myself. So great technique to using for grounding yourself is you take your shoes and your socks off and you walk outside around your house barefoot, walking on grass, rocks, being in nature. That helps ground all the firing nerves that you're experiencing from having high stress. And this works very effectively, especially if you want to prevent a panic attack from happening. And another great one to do to prevent is getting a gratitude journal. So something that I will consistently go back to is writing the 3 things every day of what I'm grateful for. And when you start doing that, there's been studies on this where it does adjust your thinking process in what happens to the brain, is where you appreciate more things in life and you find that you are not as stressed out, that there's more to life than you thought there was. And so this is something, a good strategy to implement. You know, I'm a very religious person. And so thinking about what I'm appreciated that God has given to me and the things that he has done and has helped me manage my own ADHD. So I give him all the credit as far as helping me manage my ADHD. And so sometimes it's always good to, even if you're not a religious person, to think something that's bigger than yourself, that to give that pain and suffering to that person or to that higher power, whatever that is, it does help when you're able to do something like that. And I know I wouldn't be here today without that. And that is something that I know I had to kind of share because I think that is something that is so critical when it comes to mental health and especially trying to manage your ADHD. And as a CEO, there's just more and more stress coming on you. And if you don't manage your ADHD, your business will suffer and it will crumble if you don't get that managed. And so the other thing that I want to bring full back circle about managing your ADHD without medication is I will retest my labs. I will retest to see, okay, what is still off, or I'll do a new test to see if how I can actually optimize not only my brain health, my ADHD health, but my overall health, because I know if I am optimal in every capacity, because I'm not perfect and I'm always have to improve, it just makes me better as a CEO, as a business owner, to be able to manage and run my team if my health is at its peak. And you should put that as the highest priority. Now, as far as what testing to do, what labs you should be running, well, you should watch this video next where I talk about my protocols I use for all entrepreneurs of the labs that you should be implementing that are critical for you. So watch this video next.